When I was in third grade, there was this girl in my class. She wasn't particularly liked by anyone, as she was quite the bully overall, and a rude person even to adults. She was known to have anger issues and get mad at people for what seemed like no reason. I was no exception. Her name was Carly. She had been mean to me in the past, but that didn't deter me from going to her house one day after she had been quote-unquote nice to me all day at school. Naive, I know. So before leaving school that day, I called my mom to ask if I was allowed to go to Carly's house. She said yes, and to call her when I got there so I could give her the address. Now when I think back, I wonder if she had a bad feeling about the situation, since she doesn't normally ask for an address, and she isn't picking me up since Carly's house is only about 2 blocks away. When I got there, after calling my mom of course, Carly insisted on making me look pretty, aka wetting my hair and brushing it. I let her. Then she told me to close my eyes, and that she was taking me to the living room. I closed my eyes and she began guiding me towards the bathtub. We were already in the bathroom, so the tub was a solid 2 feet away from where we were standing. I opened my eyes just enough to see where she was guiding me. My foot hit the side of the tub and I said that this didn't feel like the living room. She said that it was, and I just needed to step over the gate. I tell her that I know that this is the bathtub. She stops trying to get me into the bathtub and brings me into the kitchen instead. She says she's gonna make cereal. I was standing behind her when she reached into the dishwasher and said she was grabbing a spoon. The way she clarified she was grabbing a spoon immediately told me what she was really gonna grab, and it for sure wasn't a spoon. I can still remember the feeling of dread that overcame me when she said those words. She pulled out a large knife and backs me up into a corner, holding the knife only inches away from my neck. I can't remember if there were any words exchanged during this. I remember I was just too shocked to say anything. I only stayed there for maybe 30 seconds before I pushed her aside and ran towards the door. I grabbed my backpack and I put on my winter boots. By the time I had my boots on, Carly was trying to block the sliding door. I pushed past her again and flung the door open. I ran down her patio steps and out her front gate, not bothering to close it. I just wanted to get home where I knew I was safe. I remember her yelling at me as her dogs escaped through the open gate. I didn't care. One of her neighbors, who was in their front lawn, waved and smiled at me, clearly oblivious as to what just gone down. I ran down the road into my house, not stopping once. It wasn't until I was in the front door of my house that I broke down. I began to cry and yell for my mom. My 2 older sisters yelling at me to shut up. My mom walked over to me and immediately knew something was wrong. I had explained what happened to her, and she was very understanding and freaked out. I can't remember if it was the same day or the next day that I had talked to a police officer about the incident. He asked me what kind of knife it was and whatnot. I think my mom relayed most of the story to him because I don't remember having to say much. They got into contact with Carly's foster mom, and Carly got into big shit for it. At school, Carly yelled at me for getting the cops involved, and tried to guilt-trip me into saying that her mom threatened to put her back in foster care if she did anything like that again. I didn't care. The school was also notified about the situation, and the teachers made sure to keep an extra eye on her, but that didn't mean I wasn't paranoid around her. I made sure to keep my guard up for the rest of the school year. I always thought it was a bit extreme to involve the cops, but I ended up making sure Carly never messed with me again. I ended up moving after that year for unrelated reasons, only to move back before I started 6th grade. The first day of middle school, I was awaiting them to call my name so I know which class my homeroom was in, when I hear an all too familiar name. I watched as no one goes up to join the class. Next, I was called. I go up to join the class that she would have been in. I found out later from the teacher doing the attendance that she had moved 3 hours away just before the beginning of the school year. It's been 3 years since then, and I can only hope she doesn't come back. But if she does, I'm not too concerned. And if she does, I'll make sure that she stays the fuck away from me. That incident had given me some trust issues, but at least now I know how to choose my friends wisely. I'm a 23-year-old guy. I live in a pretty safe neighborhood, and usually I lock my doors. Last night I apparently didn't. It wasn't too long after I'd taken my dogs out for the last time, and I was turning off the TV and lights when one of my dogs started growling. Not too weird, since sometimes he does that when people walk by the house. I then heard the front door open and someone walk in. My dog then started barking. My other dog, who loves all people, came running from the other room to greet our guest. At the same time, I was reacting to what was happening and went, "What the fuck? Who are you?" Standing in the hall was a guy who was mid to late 20s. He was skinny and tall. Oh wait, I don't think I'm at the right place. He genuinely seemed confused. He apologized and said he was coming to hang out with a friend and just accidentally went to the wrong place. I asked him what house he was looking for, and he said a number that was just a few couple numbers off of mine. He apologized again and left. He seemed nice and not threatening, but I was still kinda spooked. This morning I was ready to laugh off the whole thing. I was planning on telling my neighbor, a couple in their 30s, what happened. I don't know them all too well, but we've talked before. Luckily, I caught one of them out when I was taking my dogs out. I didn't want to come off like I was mad or scared over what happened, so I casually said, "I'm sure he told you about this, but your friend paid me a surprise visit last night." My neighbor gave me this confused look and said, "What are you talking about?" "Your friend. He walked into my house last night thinking it was your place." My neighbor was quiet for a second, and then said, "I don't want to alarm you, but I have no idea what you're talking about. We didn't have a friend over last night." So this happened a few months ago. I'm a sophomore in college and was traveling down to my hometown over break. I was having some relationship issues with my stepmom, so I didn't want to stay at my dad's house the night I arrived at my hometown. So I phoned a friend of mine from high school and asked if I could stay at his place. I knew from social media that he was still in town, and I've stayed at his place before, so there would be a place for me to stay if they would allow it. My friend, let's call him Z, seemed like a pretty normal dude. We weren't best friends or anything, but we got pretty close by the time we graduated. We would occasionally text or hang out if I was in town and catch up, reminisce on the times we spent in orchestra or English. When I called, he seemed extremely enthusiastic. Z's normally an upbeat guy, but this time it seemed like he was getting a brand new car. I didn't think about it at the time, and he said I could sleep in the guest room, so I headed over. When I got to his house, he was just excited as he was on the phone. He was bringing up stuff like getting high and watching weird movies or playing video games. Z's parents weren't home, so he really wanted an opportunity to smoke. I was pretty tired from the drive, but since we rarely see each other, I thought a little bit of bonding couldn't hurt. We played Smash Bros, smoked some weed, and just chatted for a few hours. It was longer than I wanted, but I was having fun, so whatever, right? By the time it was getting late, around 2 a.m., he started asking some pretty weird questions. Like if I ever wondered what it was like to kill someone, or if I thought anyone would miss me if I was gone. This along with some pretty normal questions, like if I had a boyfriend, or how my parents are doing, or if I'm making friends at school. Gave me a weird feeling. I was confused in the moment, but it didn't hit me until after that Z could be assessing me for something bad. The weirdness of it all made me just want to go to bed. We stopped the game and both went into the basement where his room and guest room were. We say goodnight, I go to my room and get ready for bed. I'm having trouble sleeping. Just insomnia that I've had for a while, so I stay awake for around an hour until I hear some movement outside my room. The walls were pretty thin, so I could hear footsteps walking past my door and up the stairs, to the main floor and then back down quickly after. What struck me as odd is that I didn't hear the basement door open, which creaks when it does. The light didn't turn on, so I was confused as to what Z was doing. I heard him go back to his room, but I had this odd feeling. Just ever since I met him this night, he seemed a lot different than he's ever been. I decided to look him up on social media and Google to see if I could find anything out of the ordinary. Everything seemed normal until I found his Tumblr, which was linked to his inactive Twitter account that I found on my Twitter contact list. His Tumblr was, well, disturbing. There were graphic drawings of mutilated bodies of humans and animals, links to suspicious-looking websites that I didn't dare click on, text posts and stories about murdering, cannibalism, necrophilia, and torture. There were photos of guns and knives, axes, which, after looking closely, were all taken in his bedroom. The last post, around a week prior, was a text post from the account saying he wished he could find someone easy to kill, like a homeless person. I was immediately filled with dread. I knew he was going to do something. He must have gone up the stairs to lock the door. I packed my things. Luckily, I packed lightly, and opened the small window at the top of my bedroom wall. I started desperately climbing through, and as I was pulling my legs through, he opened the door. It was dark, but the streetlight illuminated enough for me to see he was carrying something long and skinny, so probably a knife. He didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. I just turned around, hopped in my car, and drove as fast as I could to my dad's house. I immediately blocked him everywhere and reported his Tumblr account, not before telling the police. They said they couldn't do anything, as the guns were registered under his dad, and he actually hadn't done anything yet. Nevertheless, I told my other high school friends not to hang out with Z. Ever since then, I've been creeped out whenever I meet new people. Just the realization that someone I knew so well could underneath be this person who could hurt me so bad. Who could kill me. I don't know what you're doing now, Z. I'm not sure I want to know, but I hope you're getting help. This happened 2 nights ago, so I'm still replaying it over and over in my head. I thought this would be a good place to share. I'm a pretty predictable person with a predictable schedule, so I'm not sure if this was a random occurrence or someone knew my nightly routine. I'm a 35-year-old woman. My husband Rob gets up for work hours before me, so he goes to bed before I do. I usually go to bed a few hours after he does, around the same time every night. I turn off the lights and the TV in the living room, and I take my dog to the back door to let her out. She's tiny, old, and poses zero threat to anyone. The door leads to a large deck outside. Off to the right of the deck is a few steps down and a small path to the gate, which we always keep chained and locked. Every single night before opening the door, I peek out the window to the right without disturbing the blinds, and flip the deck light on. I never expect anyone to be there, and we've never had a problem with anyone trespassing or trying to break in. It's just something I do every night. Kinda like peeking behind the shower curtain before I pee. I know no one is back there, but if I don't check, then that's the one time there's gonna be someone there. So a few nights ago, I got ready for bed, went to the back door with my dog slowly following behind me, and peeked out the window. I flipped on the light, and my heart jumped in my throat when I saw a dirty, skinny guy in his 30s or 40s standing off to the right of my door, facing it. I see him raise his arm up, holding a screwdriver above his head as soon as the light went on, preparing for someone to open the door. I screamed as loud as I could, which startled the guy, and he jumped over the railing of the deck and ran. My husband ran out of the bedroom with his gun. He called the police, and they showed up within 5 minutes. They drove around trying to find the guy, but no luck. The guy broke the lock on our gate to get in. He also pried open the back screen door, which we always kept locked as well. If I would have opened that door without looking out first, I might be dead. I don't know if I caught the guy trying to break in, or if he was waiting for me to open the door like I do every night. Either way, it was fucking terrifying. My parents are buying us outdoor security cameras this week as an early birthday present for Rob. This happened to me over a decade ago, but I'll never forget the feeling deep in my chest, both that night and the next morning when the true nature of the situation became apparent. It was late December in a small Texas town. We just received 5 inches of snow earlier in the day. I can't remember what time it was. All I remember is that it was dark out, and I was playing in my room. It's important to note that my room is made up of 2 rooms. A mud room with a door leading out to the front, and then my actual bedroom. The door was an older style wood door with all the old hardware, and had a window on the top half. It had a window shade, but that wouldn't stop anyone from looking in if they wanted. My room was the frontmost, with my parents' room being in the back of the house. I was in my mudroom playing with my Hot Wheels when I felt something weird. Like someone was watching me. I was facing the door at this point, and I looked right up at the window. I was trying to focus on the little openings left by the window shade. I started looking for any reason to feel unsafe and run, and after a while, I was sure there was nothing, so I went back to playing. A few minutes later, I got that feeling again. This time I didn't look at the door, but instead moved to where my back was now to the door. I was just hoping that it was all in my head. And just then, the most terrifying thing happened. There was a noise at the door, like the doorknob had been touched. I was still turned around, back facing the door. I was completely frozen at the metal-on-metal sound of the doorknob. It was moving. I didn't know how or why, but it was moving, slowly turning, testing the lock. I wanted to move, but I was frozen. It felt like someone glued every joint in my body. My chest felt like a car was parked on it. My parents had been in their shower all the way at the back of the house, leaving me at the front all alone, with the only room being lit up, mine. Suddenly, the knob was not being gently moved. Someone was turning it with force. This door was one that had to be locked with a skeleton key, so the knob could turn and open freely. Luckily, there were 2 deadbolts. Whoever was on the other side just figured the knob was free to open. As soon as I heard the knob turn all the way, I sprung up to the wall about 5 feet from the door, my back to the wall. The door fell silent. I found myself glued to the wall, unable to move. Then, the knob turned slowly. I remember watching, waiting for it to turn all the way. When it did, whoever was on the other side started trying to budge the door and pry it open. At first, it was easy going, but then they started pounding into the door with their foot. They got only 2 kicks in when I unfroze and screamed for my life. I sprinted to the back of the house to get my parents. They asked what was wrong, and I said someone tried to break in. They ran in and checked, not bothering to look outside, which I pleaded them to go out and check. They just said it was my imagination running wild, and that it was probably just an animal or the old age of the house. They took one final look in my mudroom, not bothering to investigate any further, and I was told to go back to bed. It took me hours. I don't even remember falling asleep. All I remember is staring at the door from my bed, never taking my eyes off the knob. Suddenly, I was woken by my parents, who were obviously distressed and seemed to be scared. My mom grabbed me by both of my shoulders and got right in front of me. She asked me very sternly why I thought someone tried to break in. And when I told them this time, they seemed to listen. I was worried how serious they were as they asked me about everything. When I was done, they said they had to show me something. They took me to the front door and out to the front yard, and they pointed to my door near the driveway. You could clearly see the boot prints in the snow of someone walking along the street through our yard, and straight to my window, and then my mudroom door, where I'd been playing the night prior. The police showed up and took a report, but nothing ever came of it. I was never able to sleep well in that house. I can never forget what it felt like as a child to go through this, and not have my parents believe me. I'm just glad I wasn't home alone, and was very thankful for those deadbolts.